The young boy before us was asked by his teacher to demonstrate a magic experiment. Under everyone's watchful gaze, the boy tremblingly chanted the incantation, but there was no response on the podium, drawing a wave of ridicule from the whole class. The boy's name is Will Serfort, and he studies at a magic school. In this world where magic is supreme, he, possessing zero aptitude, is deeply looked down upon by his teachers and classmates. However, what they don't know is that Will, who appears meek and submissive on the surface, frequently hunts high-level monsters deep inside the dungeon. During a break, a boy named Sion, along with his two lackeys, approached Will. As usual, he used harsh words to insult him. Right at that moment, a young girl came walking over furiously and angrily rebuked Sion. With her protection, Sion had no choice but to drop it. After Sion left, Will and Colette took a stroll in the long corridor. During this time, Colette kept comforting him, but Will didn't seem to mind. Instead, he mentioned that he considers himself lucky just to have such a cute girl worrying about him. These sudden words made Colette's heart race frantically. After snapping out of it, Colette noticed that Will was staring blankly at the sky. In this world, the sky holds a different meaning. Long ago, humanity suffered under the oppression of invaders from the sky. At that moment, 5 powerful human mages stepped forward. They drove out the invaders, cast a seal on the sky, and finally resolved humanity's crisis. People call them the mage. This title for the strongest has been passed down to this day. When Will was young, he heard the legend of the mage from stories. Thus, he and his childhood friend Elfaria promised each other that they would become mage together and witness the beautiful sky at the top of the tower. However, as they grew up, the exceptionally talented Elfaria became the youngest Magiavander, while Will remained stuck in place because he couldn't use magic. Not long after, Will was being scolded in a room by a teacher named Workner. Workner is the teacher responsible for managing the dungeon, and Will frequently enters and exits its depths. This dangerous behavior causes a major headache for his teacher. However, Will also feels quite helpless about it, because to become a Magiavander, one must advance to the upper institute, and advancement requires earning a large number of credits in academics, spells, and practical combat. Since he cannot use magic, he cannot earn credits in spells, so he can only go to the dungeon to hunt monsters to make up for the spell credits. Workner feels deeply helpless regarding Will's ideas, as relying solely on practical combat to advance is unrealistic. He has advised him against it more than once, but Will has never given up. Seeing the steadfast Will, Workner reminded him that he might face expulsion, stating that he can only stay at the school if he defeats a monster worth 4 credits within 2 days. Upon hearing this, Will anxiously started searching for information on monsters. Seeing this, Workner began talking to himself, revealing the information about the monster Will needed. Will was so moved by this that he hugged him. However, what neither of them knew was that their conversation was overheard by Sion, who was standing outside the door. He planned to hunt the monster ahead of time, using this opportunity to force Will out of school. Shortly after, Will, along with his familiar Kiki, arrived at the 6th floor of the dungeon. On the way, Will was in high spirits because of the credits, while Kiki was feeling down due to their past hunting experiences, so Will kept trying his best to comfort him. Meanwhile, Sion also arrived at the 6th floor with his 2 lackeys, looking completely disdainful as he prepared to hunt the monster. But his lackeys behind him seemed a bit uneasy, feeling that they could not defeat the monsters on the 6th layer. However, under Sion's intimidation, they couldn't speak up to persuade him. Along the way, Sion's head was filled with thoughts of finding a monster to prevent Will from staying at the school. However, an unexpected change occurred at this time. The sudden appearance of the monster terrified the lackeys, leaving them panic-stricken. This wail also successfully attracted Will, who was in the distance. He rushed all the way and quickly arrived near the sound. He then saw a highly valuable monster and Sion, who was panic-stricken on the ground. Looking at the scene before him, Will, who was about to act, wavered. He wondered if it was necessary to rescue Sion, who often bullied him, and while he was hesitating, a voice echoed in his mind. Will recalled what his close friend had said before leaving. Those words made him realize his goal. So, he silently put on the gift Elfaria gave him and decisively rushed forward. On the other side, Edward anxiously found Workner. He stated that Sion and the others had entered the underground dungeon without authorization. This shocked Workner, who immediately asked about their whereabouts. However, after learning that Sion and the others had gone to the 6th layer, Workner instantly calmed down because he knew Will was there. Will's sharp attack successfully angered the monster. It used the gravel on the ground to continuously attack Will, but still couldn't do anything to him. This scene shocked Edward. While Workner had already gotten used to it, he knew Will's talent very well. Will's strength, speed, and amazing insight made him unique in this world. After the battle, Will walked over to help Sion up from the ground. This action made Sion furious. On the other side, Edward, who witnessed everything, was also very dissatisfied. He, who highly revered magic, could not accept anything that could surpass magic and left the room immediately. Afterward, Workner once again looked at Will with a serious expression, scaring him into kneeling obediently on the side to take the lecture. Fortunately, Will successfully earned credits and secured his qualification to attend school. He could continue to pursue his dream of becoming a Magiavander. Since he was a child, Will has suffered from the taunts of his peers, simply because he studies at a magic school but cannot use magic. However, not everyone loathes him. As his teacher, Workner takes great care of Will. He brought Will to the headmaster's office. At first glance, the headmaster recognized Will's talent. She placed a short sword into to his hand and subsequently witnessed an incredible scene. After witnessing Will's astonishing performance, the headmaster became even more convinced of her own thoughts. She agreed to let him stay at the school. From that point on, Will's destiny began to change. After the incident in the dungeon ended, Will continued his arduous school life. In class, Mr. Werkner was extremely strict, which left many students suffering beyond words. Furthermore, after class, Will still had to attend Werkner's remedial lessons. The remedial lessons covered a lot of content, causing his companion, Colette, to deeply sigh over how difficult things were for Will. While the two were taking a walk, Cyan and others appeared ahead of them. At this time, his followers were bragging to everyone about how Cyan had single-handedly killed a high-level magical beast. However, only Cyan himself knew that he had merely been saved by Will in the dungeon. Coincidentally, at that moment, Will and Colette passed by. Seeing Will, Cyan immediately rushed forward and grabbed him, but after a brief standoff, he didn't express anything else and left everyone's sight, gnashing his teeth. On the other side, Edward angrily approached the headmaster. He could not accept Will's existence as a warrior and wanted Will to drop out of school. Facing Edward's demand, the headmaster pulled out Will's files. She stated that Will possesses a talent that surpasses ordinary people, and aside from not knowing magic, he is undoubtedly an excellent prodigy. For the sake of a certain day in the future, the Academy has a duty to nurture such a sage. Edward did not agree with what the headmaster said, because no matter what, Will, who cannot use magic, should not aim for the mage evander. This reasoning indeed left the headmaster unable to refute. After weighing the options, the headmaster prepared to hand this matter over to Edward for him to handle, allowing him to personally test Will and decide whether he stays or leaves based on the test results. Having received a satisfactory answer, Edward left the headmaster's office. As for this outcome, it seemed to be entirely within the headmaster's control. Meanwhile, Will and Colette were studying in the library. In fact, Will's academic performance is highly excellent, but he still doesn't dare to slack off due to his own shortcomings. From history books, Will learned about the deeds of some dwarves. They, like Will, used physical arts to fight magic. This gave Will some motivation. While studying, Colette noticed a white hair on Will's head. Although Will didn't care, Colette was eager to get her hands on it. Just then, Edward appeared behind Will and told him to follow him to the training ground. Soon, Will arrived at the destination with Edward. However, as soon as they arrived, Edward assumed an offensive stance. He stated that Will had to duel him. If Will could hit him even once, he would earn 5 credits. Otherwise, he would be expelled from the school. This sudden predicament caught Will completely off guard, but Edward's attack was already right in front of him. On the other side, after being notified, Werkner arrived at the headmaster's office. When he arrived, the headmaster unfolded an observation water mirror, which clearly reflected Will and Edward. The headmaster told Werkner what happened and forbade him from interfering in the match. Hearing this, Werkner was very puzzled because he clearly knew Edward's strength and that he was the closest person to the top 5 staffs. At this moment in the training ground, Will's situation was extremely difficult. Even low-level magic had tremendous power in Edward's hands. Unarmed, Will tried to kick Edward's barrier, but it was useless. He was instantly knocked away by the sudden explosion. Seeing this, Edward was unmoved. In the blink of an eye, he released a large number of magic arrays again. They blasted toward Will like laser cannons. This continuous assault left him completely helpless. At the same time, in the library, Colette was worried about Will's safety. Just as she was imagining Edward's brutal tutorial, Kiki walked over, dragging his injured body. Seeing this, Colette hurriedly stepped forward to check. Kiki was clawing at Will's locker. This action allowed her to instantly figure out Will's situation. At the same time, Edward was trampling on Will's head. He wanted to make Will lose hope of becoming one of the top 5 staffs, but Will was completely unaffected by him. This determined Will sparked Edward's curiosity. Under his questioning, Will also shared his promise to Elfaria. As soon as those words were spoken, Edward was instantly enraged. In his eyes, it was a very childish reason. The two held their ground, standing in sharp opposition to each other. Just as the battle was about to erupt, Colette arrived at the scene with Will's sword and successfully delivered it into Will's hands. After getting the sword, Will was instantly filled with fighting spirit. With one strike, he cut through the opponent's magic. Seeing this, Edward unleashed his full power, and the surrounding area was completely covered by magic arrays. The duel between the two entered its final stage. With his agile movements, Will blocked several attacks. Blending into the magic array, he watched carefully and found an opportunity to attack his opponent. Ultimately, one final blow shattered the barrier, and he pointed the sword in his hand at Edward. The battle was over. Edward seemed very unwilling to accept the result, but he could do nothing about it. He could only give the other party 5 credits as agreed. Will successfully overcame this crisis. In the headmaster's office, Werkner and the headmaster saw everything through the water mirror. The headmaster was very satisfied with Will's performance and highly praised his unyielding character. This was the first time Will was completely infuriated. With just his bare hands, he brought down 2 students in an instant. Afterward, he faced off against the 3rd-ranked student from the upper academy. Neither side would back down, and they ultimately agreed to a duel. At the Regaria Academy of Magic, one must earn 7,200 credits out of a possible 12,000 to advance to the upper academy. This is also a necessary requirement to become one of the mage evander. In the training grounds, students were undergoing their magic technique examinations. Among them, Cyan and Colette performed exceptionally well, and both of their credit scores met the qualifications to advance to the upper academy. Unlike their effortless performance, moments, Will was continuously dodging a stone statue. Just as he was preparing to attack with his fists, the mocking laughter from the students around him distracted him, and he was ultimately sent flying by a strike from the statue. By contrast, a feast of magic was unfolding on the other side of the training grounds. The two competitors were geniuses from the upper academy, completing their evaluation in just a few moments. Following them, another student wiped out all the stone statues to demonstrate his power. With the upcoming Magia Festa, a student named Julius was the first to challenge the other two. He signaled the two with an ice rose, which was quickly shredded by their magic. This initial clash also signified the three's determination toward the Magia Festa. Looking at the three students with over 10,000 credits, Will felt somewhat despondent, as he only had a little over 5,000, not even enough to graduate. Seeing Will's gloomy demeanor, Kiki stepped forward to comfort him. Just then, Julius passed by with his entourage. He looked down on Will with an arrogant attitude, but there was nothing Will could do about it. During lunchtime, Colette kept encouraging Will to participate in the Magia Festa. The so-called Magia Festa is a competitive tournament held once every 2 years. At the festival, students showcase their talents, while high-ranking mages from the tower come to scout for prospects. If a student is handpicked by a faction led by the Magiavander during this period, they can directly become a member of the tower. Colette was incredibly excited about this, but Will remained unmoved. Because of a bad experience at a previous festival, Will did not plan to participate this time. After finishing their meal, Colette was still trying to convince Will inside a storage room. While talking, she discovered a hidden magic barrier. Holding Kiki, Colette approached the barrier. The barrier was easily dispelled, revealing a mysterious passage leading underground. Beneath the barrier lay a small-scale gambling parlor, where some students were placing bets on the Magia Festa. The scene deeply shocked Will and Colette, who had just arrived. Inside the parlor, Sion was feeling resentful that his evaluation didn't match up to Julius and the other two. Right at that moment, Will spotted him, causing Sion to flusteredly hide the flyer, immediately causing Sion to nervously put away the flyers. Upon seeing Colette, he was instantly filled with hostility. Seeing this, Will was the first to ask about Sion's purpose for coming. In response, Sion originally intended to keep his mouth shut, but the follower behind him let the secret slip, leaving the embarrassed Sion to fly into a rage. After giving an explanation, he quickly left. After the gambling house, Will, who had just finished class, woke up the sleeping Kiki. Just as he was about to leave, Colette called out to him. She asked Will if he had any free time, and indicated that she could accompany him to the dungeon. Faced with Colette's enthusiasm, Will declined, because he still had to go to his part-time job. This left Colette looking utterly dejected. Even Kiki felt a bit helpless. Soon, night fell. The streets of the slum district were filled with laughter and cheerful chatter. At this moment, the dwarves in a tavern were drinking heartily, creating a very pleasant atmosphere. And this tavern happened to be where Will worked part-time. Will got along very harmoniously with the dwarves here. During this time, he chatted casually with Mr. Donnan, but this instantly aroused the dissatisfaction of the owner, Gina, frightening Will into stopping immediately. Rusty also worked at this tavern, but he only came at Will's request. He never refused any request from this roommate. Will had always been working his part-time job under this friendly atmosphere. After the customers gradually left, Rusty questioned Will because the pay given by the dwarves is usually not much. Furthermore, Workner still took great care of him, so he was curious why Will didn't change to another job. In response, Will stated that he didn't want to trouble Workner. Moreover, he also really liked staying with the kind and sincere dwarves. While the two were chatting casually, a group of uninvited guests arrived at the tavern. Right after entering, Julius, who was leading the group, spoke rudely to Will. He went even further by continuously insulting the dwarves. Yet, the dwarves could not retaliate, because they had fled to this place after their world was destroyed, leaving them with extremely low status. Not long after, Rusty delivered the food to the three of them, but the other party just kept mocking the poor quality of the food. This became something Will could no longer tolerate. Regarding Julius insulting the dwarves' food, Will formally demanded an apology from him, but the highly conceited Julius showed no remorse at all. He kicked the food right onto Will, thoroughly enraging Will. "Don't push your luck, you talentless loser. Get lost already." Faced with Will's actions, Julius instantly flew into a rage. He covered the room with freezing ice, attacking him with the ice pillars he summoned. Even though Will dodged quickly, he was still trapped against the wall by the continuous ice crystals. Watching his roommate deeply entangled in a crisis, Rusty, who was standing aside, prepared to take action. But suddenly, Julius changed his mind. Looking at the resolute expression in Will's eyes, he decided to fight him in the grimoire, using this as a way to publicly humiliate Will. Upon hearing this, Will instantly broke free from the restraints. Using Julius apologizing to the dwarves as a bargaining chip, he agreed to the other party's demand. This is Will's first time revealing his true power in front of everyone. Facing the countless stone statues, he was the first to charge ahead. As always, Will's actions provoked ridicule from the students, but immediately after, he cleared out the horde of stone statues all by himself in an instant. This shocking display left both the spectators and the judges completely dumbfounded. Across the vast open square, the students' magic exploded into the sky like a display of fireworks. With that, the magic festival officially began. In the opening aerial event, Lihana, known as the Perfect Prodigy, won the cheers of the entire stadium with an overwhelming victory. This also made the talent scouts in attendance even more proactive, as they all began searching for the talents they needed. Watching the bustling scene, the head mistress couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Meanwhile, Iris, standing beside her, seemed completely if indifferent. After staying for just a moment, she used work as an excuse and prepared to leave. Furthermore, she also planned to go to the venue herself to cheer for Will. At the same time, the lackeys were cheering on Sion. At this moment, Sion was in an exceptionally joyful mood, because not long ago, Colette had personally asked him to team up with her. This led Sion to believe that Colette had finally abandoned Will and chosen him instead. However, when he eagerly arrived at the locker room, he saw Colette standing right there with Will. Upon seeing Sion, Colette explained her reason for inviting him. Since the tournament requires a participating team to have a combined total of at least 21,000 credits, she had no choice but to invite Sion so that Will could participate. Hearing the real reason, Sion instantly flew into a rage, but just as he and Will were facing off, Julius suddenly appeared behind him. At this moment, Will was glaring intensely at Julius. This made Sion furious for being completely ignored. Everything that happened in the dungeon kept replaying in his mind, and the gaze he directed toward Will grew colder and colder. Soon, the afternoon events of the Magic Festival were about to begin. The student in charge of the live commentary was named Mike, while the match analysis was handled by Edward. Mike was extremely displeased about sharing the stage with such a gloomy teacher, but under the other's intimidating presence, he had no choice but to comply. After that brief interlude, Mike began explaining the rules of the match. First, the spirits conjured 5 major domains. These 5 domains were spread out all around the arena. The participants, competing in teams of 3, had to navigate through various traps within their assigned domains. During this time, they could also hinder other teams. Ultimately, the team that reached the central arena and secured the crown would claim victory. It was a battle royale in every sense of the word. Before the match began, Mike announced the approval ratings from an underground betting pool. Among them, Julius and Ignor's teams were tied for first place. Meanwhile, Will's team was ranked dead last. This instantly triggered laughter throughout the entire stadium, leaving Rosti, who was watching from the sidelines, deeply worried. Shortly after, the competing teams entered the arena one by one. At that moment, Wignall stopped Will right before he could step onto the field. He urged Will not to get involved with the Magic Festival, but this time Will's mind was made up. After firmly stating his intentions, he turned around and walked away. With Mike's announcement, the match officially began. The first obstacle the contestants had to face was a massive swarm of stone statues. Confronted by such an overwhelming force, Will was the first to charge straight ahead. Seeing this, the crowd in the stands continued to mock Will, but very soon, they would witness a scene they would never forget for the rest of their lives. The shockwave from the explosion of the stone statue was immensely powerful. It knocked down the 2 people who were making sarcastic remarks earlier. At this moment, the entire venue was shocked by Will's immense strength, and the cheers resounded through the whole tournament. Looking at Will showing his powers, Sion's heart grew more and more restless. His mind kept recalling the memories of the Undercity. In order to fill the humiliation of that time, he practiced magic desperately and wanted to become stronger, but Will was always one step ahead of him. This made it more and more unacceptable to him. Soon, Will and his party arrived at the desert area. There were traps everywhere that could launch rocks, but these clearly couldn't stop Will. After he broke through the attack, Colette summoned the stone weapons again. Will used these giant swords to quickly destroy the traps in front of him and pass the level with ease. Will's spectacular performance successfully silenced the sarcastic words, and even the mages who came to scout talents were deeply shocked. This made Iris cheer loudly for Will. However, the other teams were not so smooth. Faced with cruel traps, they fell into crises one after another. At the same time, Julius also passed the level easily. Through magic, the followers learned Will's position. They were worried that they would lose to Will and his party, but Julius was calm and unhurried, still looking confident. After a long time of effort, Will and his party arrived at the final area. This place was full of dark attribute magic circles. Seeing this, Will used his sword to chop off the stone blocks on the ground, making the attacks of the magic circles cancel each other out. This made Edward, who was responsible for setting the traps, very displeased. While moving forward, Will analyzed the situations that might occur in the game. He planned to occupy favorable terrain and fight Julius, but in the next moment, this sudden change shocked Will. Julius didn't hesitate at all and immediately launched a large-scale ice pillar attack, which forced Will to dodge. At the critical moment, Julius's magic was burned down by fire. At this time, Sion's body was filled with blazing fire, and he chanted magic without thinking. Then he directly launched an attack on Will and his companion. Fortunately, Colette reacted in time, allowing Will to escape unharmed. After recovering his senses, Will was incredulous. The forest in front of him was completely burned to ashes. At this time, Sion slowly walked towards Will and asked him for a duel. Then he launched an attack without thinking. Seeing this, Colette wanted to stop him, but suddenly an ice wall blocked her, which was exactly what Julius did. At this time, Will wanted to help Colette, but Sion launched attacks one after another, which made Will a bit overwhelmed. Seeing Will holding back, Sion became angrier. In desperation, Will could only pick up his stone sword. The battle between the two was already unavoidable. Because he cannot use magic, Will has been looked down upon by those around him since he was a child. He is seen as a worthless, incompetent person. This tragic plight was witnessed by Sion, who was standing nearby. Without hesitation, he burned the paper note on Will's back, wanting Will to become his sidekick to help him avoid these tragedies. However, Will left without even turning his head back. After being ignored, an angry Sion stepped forward and grabbed Will. Will, but he was startled by the dark expression on Will's face. At this moment, Will walked to the front of the tower, preoccupied with his own thoughts. His eyes held nothing but his promise to Elfaria. What he didn't know was that this unintentional disregard would bring huge trouble to his future life. In the forest of the Magic Grimoire tournament, Will was frantically running away. At this time, Scion, not far away, was remotely controlling fireballs to continuously launch attacks. Under his continuous attacks, even Will was caught off guard and thrown into a panic. However, seeing this, Scion was not happy at all. He scolded Will for being timid and hesitant, showing absolutely no intention of attacking. Will remained non-committal about this, because in his view, there was no reason for the two of them to fight. At this moment, on the arena grounds, the audience had already seen everything through the crystal balls. This sudden change surprised Mike. It made Edward, who had been targeting Will, even happier. And this twist also disappointed the scouts who had favored Scion before, greatly lowering his rating. At this moment, in the spectator stands, Iris came to Rosty's side. After getting permission, she cheered for Will by his side. This move made Rosty a little puzzled. Seeing this, Iris explained that a great person had introduced Will to her. At first, she didn't care much, but after getting in touch, she discovered the charm of the senior student. Rosty deeply agreed with this, because he also had a deep love for Will. In the forest at this time, Colette was anxious to stop the fight between Will and Scion, but unfortunately, Julius kept pestering her. In her irritation, Colette used magic to block the opponent's attack, but she never expected to be led into a trap by Julius, falling into a dangerous situation. At the same time, the audience was surprised to find that Julius's figure appeared in various areas. One of the Julius appeared in front of. He decided to defeat the opponent according to the agreement, but facing the person in front of him, Wignall was not panicked at all. After using wind magic, he easily dealt with Julius. Then, looking at the remaining ice crystals on the ground, he fell into deep thought. On the other side, Will and Scion were still at a stalemate. Will still couldn't understand why the other party was targeting him like this, but facing the continuous attacks, he could only helplessly dodge. What he didn't know was that after the last incident, Scion was no longer what he used to be. With a simple gesture, the opponent summoned the Flame Guardian and then launched an attack on him. Facing the fiercely attacking Fire Eagle, even Will had to avoid its sharp edge. Furthermore, the Fire Eagle can release blazing flames. Combined with Scion's long-range attacks, it leaves Will struggling to defend for a moment. This level of magical mastery shocks everyone present. Even the mages who were trying to recruit him are paying close attention, constantly asking their companions for information. In the battle between the two, Scion has been giving it his all, but after seeing that Will is still holding back, he flies into a rage. He yells at Will, demanding to know why he isn't fighting back. After all, Scion has always gone out of his way to make things difficult for him, and indeed, Will does harbor a deep resentment toward him. However, right now, he needs to defeat Julius first. This statement pushes Scion completely over the edge. His long brewing emotions finally explode. Seeing Scion screaming at the top of his lungs, Will is shocked beyond words. In this moment, he finally understands Scion's resolve. To honor his opponent's expectations for the fight, Will finally gets serious. Seeing this, Scion summons the Guardian Fire Eagle once again. Faced with the incoming attack, Will rushes right into the fray. He finds an opening and slices through the core of the Fire Eagle in one blow, heading straight for Scion. As the two clash in their final showdown, a giant boulder crashes down from the sky. Both of them are knocked to the ground by the sudden stone wall. They look up to see Colette standing there in disheveled clothes. Upon seeing her, Will curiously asks about Julius's whereabouts. Colette responds that Julius vanished right after she attacked him. Scion, also noticing Colette, is briefly stunned. He is then startled by her revealing attire. He hurriedly warns her that dressing like that will make it impossible for her to ever get married. Hearing this from the culprit responsible for her state, Colette is completely speechless. She steps forward to block Scion and loudly scolds him for his actions, which caused Will to miss his chance to prove himself in front of the tower. Right then, Will thoughtfully steps forward and places his coat over Colette's shoulders. As she blushes, he turns and leaves the area, leaving behind the restrained Scion, who is throwing a tantrum on the spot. Meanwhile, the audience is focused on the arena entrance. Amidst the cheering crowd, Julius and his group are the first to arrive at the stadium, just as the commentator assumes they are about to claim victory. But then Will comes. This is the highlight moment where Will shocks the entire arena. Not only did he effortlessly defeat Julius's two sidekicks, but he also completely saw through the opponent's magic, backing the once arrogant Julius into a tight corner. At the top of the distant tower, Elfaria, as one of the mage of Vander, is currently slacking off. At this moment, her secretary, Sarissa, arrives unexpectedly and pats her awake. She hands over the candidates to inherit the ice rod to Elfaria, and this person happens to be Julius, who has a conflict with Will. After looking through the documents, Elfaria also feels that Julius indeed has great potential. However, she has no intention of finding a successor. What she truly wants is a sword that can stay by her side. Meanwhile, back in the arena, Will's sudden appearance leaves Julius feeling incredibly thrilled, because he had previously stated that he wanted to humiliate his opponent during the match. In response to this, Will shows absolutely no sign of backing down. The battle between the two begins instantly. After Julius releases an ice mist, Will judges 3 different positions based on the sounds. While moving at high speed, he manages to evade all the incoming ice spikes, and then seizes an opening to slash at Julius. But just when he thinks the victory is decided, a fourth ice spike flies straight towards him, neutralizing his attack. As the ice mist clears, Will is shocked to find that there are actually 5 Julius on the field. Before he can even recover from the shock, one of the Julius walks right up to him and instantly triggers an explosion, freezing Will directly inside the ice. Witnessing this scene, many spectators recognize the magic Julius is using. His magic belongs to Elfaria's 12 secret ice arts. It is the art of white, which allows the user to summon ice clones. After realizing this, Will becomes highly emotional, loudly demanding to know how the opponent learned it. Seeing this, Julius becomes incredibly smug. He claims he taught himself this secret art, and even mocks the Ice Queen's rod as nothing special. He goes as far as to boast that he will strip away everything from his opponent. These words completely enrage Will. He breaks free from his restraints and charges at Julius. However, this action plays right into the opponent's hands. Subsequently, Will finds himself trapped under a coordinated attack by the clones, unable to break free for a while. While Will is pinned down, 3 clones suddenly transform into 3 pillars of light and collapse onto him, ultimately forming a barrier that leaves Will completely immobilized. Seeing this, Julius unleashes his magic once again. Soon after, a massive ice spike descends from the sky, crashing directly into the barrier where Will is trapped. After completing his attack, Julius starts showboating and delivers a speech to the audience. All of this is observed by Iris, who is watching secretly from the shadows. However, she and Rosti do not seem worried about Will's situation at all. While Julius is gloating over his success, the ice spike behind him suddenly shatters, and Will calmly steps out from within. After surviving this assault, he has completely regained his composure. On the other hand, seeing Will completely unharmed makes Julius furious. He and his sidekicks immediately launch another attack, but these moves completely fail to hit Will. Instead, they leave themselves wide open. With a single strike, Will knocks both sidekicks to the ground. Watching this unfold, Edward is also profoundly shocked, which reminds him of a previous battle. The moment the sidekicks fall, the ice clones instantly shatter into pieces. At this moment, Will exposes the truth behind Julius's magic. He points out that the opponent cannot master Elfaria's art of white at all. He was simply using his companions to control the clones. As his trick is exposed, Julius grits his teeth in sheer rage. He uses the ice vines in his hand to strike at Will, detonating them right after Will cuts them down. Using the smoke as a cover, he summons even more clones to launch a combined magical assault against Will. Although very unwilling, Julius understood that he could not control the movement of his clones. At the same time, he also didn't believe Will could distinguish his true self. However, in the next moment, what? Ice wall! This sudden attack caught Julius completely off guard. What he didn't know was that Will had exposed all the clones based purely on the slight temperature difference between them and the real body. This move left Julius crying out that it was impossible. But what he didn't know was that Will had grown up together with Elfaria since childhood. No one understood Elfaria better than Will. He was familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of her magic, and combined with his own efforts, Will was bound to win. Faced with reality, Julius went into a complete frenzy, but his attacks couldn't harm his opponent in the slightest. Subsequently, Will dealt him another blow. Will revealed that the illusion art of the whiteness was actually created by Elfaria when she was only 2 years old. Thus, Julius, who was showing off and acting proud because of it, looked just like a king wearing new clothes. These words completely shattered Julius's mental defense. In a fit of rage, he summoned 8 clones at once, attempting to overwhelm his opponent with sheer numbers. But for Will, who used to be teased by 10 Elfaria at once, this was no problem at all. No matter how dense Julius's attacks were, Will could always dodge them easily, quickly taking down the clones and forcing Julius to run around in panic. Under Will's relentless assault, Julius, stripped of his clone cover, had nowhere to hide. Ultimately, he was sent flying by a punch from Will, landing on the arena floor. Seeing Will's flawless performance, the entire stadium erupted in thunderous applause. But just as Will was about to claim the crown in one final push, he suddenly discovered that Julius had already beaten him to it. This scene left the audience stunned, and left Will, who had fought for so long, wanting to cry, but finding no tears. Meanwhile, at the top of the tower, Elfaria was extremely flustered. She stated that she hadn't meant to bully Will back then. She just wanted to keep him all to herself, and now her embarrassing past was known to the entire school, making her feel even more mortified. Her reaction left her secretary on the side completely speechless. On the other side, Colette ran towards Will with an excited face. Although they didn't win the championship in the end, she was genuinely happy for him from the bottom of her heart. Will was equally comforted because he was getting closer and closer to his goal. This is a rare Asura field in the magical world. Because of Will, Colette and Rosti got into a heated argument. It all started when Colette went out shopping with Will for the first time, and Rosti suddenly showed up at the scene. He broke their private one-on-one time together and frequently initiated close contact with Will, completely leaving Colette on the side. On the poor streets at night, a tavern called the Hen and Pea Pot is filled with cheers and joy. To celebrate Will's victory, the dwarves are throwing a grand party. Colette and Rosti, among others, were also invited. However, the Sundaration did not show up. While everyone is immersed in a joyful atmosphere, Julius is hard at work washing dishes, and his sidekicks couldn't escape the same fate either. This makes Julius, who was already frustrated over losing the match, even more irritated, leaving him with with no choice but to begrudingly run around serving the tavern. Watching this, everyone feels deeply refreshed, and just then, Colette notices Wagnall's expression. Wagnall expresses that they shouldn't have participated in the Magic Festival Grand Tournament. This leaves Colette a bit puzzled, because she thinks this could improve Will's image. But after hearing her thoughts, Wagnall thinks otherwise, and offers no further explanation. The next morning, the students who are about to start their practical internships are all feeling anxious. They all want to cling to powerful teammates to head down to the dungeon. Naturally, Will becomes everyone's target. Faced with the sudden invitations, Will is left a bit dazed. Soon after, several more groups of students approach him, cornering him against the wall in an instant. Such immense popularity causes the top students on the side to look over in surprise. Regarding the students' enthusiasm, Colette knows very well that it's all because of Will's outstanding performance in the tournament. So she steps forward to block the crowd, accusing them of their past behavior toward Will, leaving them completely speechless. However, when Colette turns to look back at Will, he is actually beaming with absolute excitement. This gives the other students an opening. They point out that Colette wants to monopolize Will for herself and immediately step forward to team up with him. Seeing this scene, Colette grabs Will into her arms. She declares that Will cannot go to the dungeon because they have already made plans to go shopping together. This leaves the person in question, Will, looking completely bewildered. That night, inside Colette's room, she is still feeling embarrassed over what she said during the day. Just then, her friend walks in. She hands her a drink and advises her to dress up nicely tomorrow, hoping she can turn tomorrow's shopping trip into a real date. At the same time, Will is in his room reviewing his lessons. Rosti, who is on the top bunk, asks him about his schedule for tomorrow. From Will, Rosti learns that he is going shopping with someone else. Through their conversation, Rosti guesses that the person is Colette, causing his expression to change slightly. The next morning, a beautifully dressed Colette arrives early at the meeting spot. Not long after, Will arrives ahead of schedule as well. Looking at a glowing, high-spirited Will, Colette instantly becomes shy and fidgety. After he compliments her outfit, she gets even more nervous, swaying back and forth unsteadily. During this harmonious moment, Rosti suddenly appears right in front of them. This causes the sweet atmosphere to vanish instantly. Seeing Colette's stunned expression, Will explains that Rosti wants to go shopping with them too. Right after, Will is pulled away by Rosti, leaving Colette standing there in a daze. Throughout the rest of their trip, Rosti clings tightly to Will, never leaving his side. This leaves Colette, who can't even chime into the conversation, wanting to cry but having no tears left. During a break at noon, Will notices that Colette is feeling down. After he asked, the other person couldn't take it anymore and started to complain frantically about Rosti. She even began to doubt his gender. In response to Colette's doubts, Will gave a definite answer. He stated that the two of them often take baths together, so he is undoubtedly a male. As for their intimate interactions, that's just how the other person has been ever since they first met. As soon as he finished speaking, Rosti came up to them with 2 drinks. Not having a drink for himself, he naturally wanted to share one with Will. This instantly made Colette's face go dark, and she handed him her own drink instead. Sensing the awkward atmosphere, Rosti used sword maintenance as an excuse to ask Will to leave first. Colette also played along and helped persuade him, letting the clueless Will leave beforehand and get away from this battlefield that was about to explode into an argument. After Will left, Colette directly confronted Rosti. She wanted to know if he had feelings for Will that went beyond friendship. Rosti readily admitted to this. Afterward, the two clashed over their relationship with Will, refusing to yield to each other, which attracted many bystanders. Their intense confrontation felt like a battle between a dragon and a tiger. Meanwhile, Lihana found Will, who was completely by himself. She mentioned that she wanted to take up a bit of his time and then led him to a gorgeous cafe. Upon opening the door, what came into view were all top students from the academy. Among them were Sion and Julius, who both have a grudge against Will. Seeing his arrival, they both instantly became displeased. On the other hand, Lihana, who was hosting, had a completely clueless look on her face. This left Will completely speechless. Seeing Will fix his eyes on Lihana, Sion walked up to him in great annoyance. Seeing this, Edward immediately cast an illusion magic, which finally stopped Sion from making a move. After the commotion ended, Lihana revealed her purpose for inviting Will. Because of the upcoming integrated training, she planned to invite Will to join their team. She believed that he possessed qualities they lacked, which could be helpful in the dungeon. In response to Lihana's words, Julius immediately mocked her judgment. Sion also chimed in, stating that he didn't want to be teammates with Will again. Their pretentious statements drew criticism from Edward. In his eyes, as defeated opponents, the two had no right to judge Will, just like how he highly respects Lihana, whose grades are better than his. With just a few words, he made both of them burn with anger. Looking at everyone arguing, Lihana explained her situation. As a member of a short-lived influential family, she must achieve great success in order to ensure her family's prosperity. She believed that everyone present had ambitious goals. Therefore, if they agreed that forming a team would be beneficial, they should drop a coin into the cup to show their agreement. No one could refuse such a proposal. And Will, who had a promise to keep, eventually agreed to Lihana's invitation. Upon going outside and running into Colette and Rosti, he told them his decision. The next day arrived quickly, and the training team was ready. After arriving at the dungeon, Colette also joined Will's team. As a student of the magic engineering department, Rosti could only wait outside. The two shared a brief farewell. After everything was fully prepared, the students embarked on their training journey. This is the biggest crisis Will has faced since exploring the dungeon. The magical beast that suddenly appeared easily broke through his defense. Then, it appeared behind Wignall like a ghost, sending him flying with a single punch. It even shattered the ground, causing everyone to lose their footing and fall into the deep, terrifying depths of the dungeon. The moment the internship started, Will and the others rushed out, taking the lead. Immediately after, Wignall cast the wind of the magical forest and safely landed at the bottom of the cliff. Just as Will came to his senses, a swarm of ant beasts surged forward. Seeing this, he intended to step forward and resist, but Wignall stopped him. Soon after, Lihana charged into the beast swarm like lightning. Through enchantment magic, she instantly broke through the beast's defense line, completely wiping out all of them. In the battles that followed, Will achieved no results at all, and instead became somewhat out of sync with the team. This was all because he couldn't use perception magic, giving him no opportunity to strike in front of these elites. He could only watch as others effortlessly dealt with the beasts, earning the contempt of Wignall and the rest. Even Lihana, who had initially invited him, began to have doubts, which inevitably dealt a blow to Will. After defeating the beasts, everyone used their wands as a medium to earn academic credits, but Will was unable to do so. He could only pack the beast corpses into his backpack, which undoubtedly made the others look down on him even more. Seeing this, Colette was a bit worried about Will, but fortunately, he had a resilient mindset and didn't harbor many negative emotions. After moving forward for a while, the group arrived at a rocky area to rest. To ensure safety, Wignall once again used an illusion to create a wall of fire to scare away the surrounding beasts. Once settled, Will distributed the food he had prepared to everyone, but when he tried to hand it to Wignall, Wignall waved his hand in refusal, stating that elves do not interact with anyone they do not acknowledge. He made Will place the food on the ground, which deeply upset Colette, who was nearby. However, Wignall didn't care and told Will not to waste his efforts, stating that he only acknowledged Lihana in this team. Just as Colette was about to argue further, Will spoke up to stop her. He didn't mind Wignall's behavior because that is just the culture of elves. Elves from the other world are far superior to dwarves and possess an innate talent for magic. One of the current 5 staffs is also a princess of the elf race. After resting for a moment, Lihana explained their next goal to everyone. She intended to hunt Nabirus, the most difficult beast in the internship. This was also her goal in forming this team. Hearing this, no one was surprised, and Will secretly resolved to play a helpful role in the hunt. Meanwhile, on the other side of the dungeon, 2 bizarre figures stood amidst the corpses of the beasts. One of them had killed a teacher from the academy. With black mist floating above his neck, he was drawing a strange symbol. At the same time, Will's group gradually noticed something was wrong, as all the beasts around them had been wiped out. Through observation, Will discovered that the beasts had all died from brute force. The quiet atmosphere sent a shiver down everyone's spine. After searching for a while, the group was shocked to find that Nabirus had already been killed. This shocking scene prompted them to immediately activate their perception magic, but it yielded no results. While perception magic is useful, it is not invincible. It is completely useless against certain traps and secret magic. This is something that Werkner had taught Will a long time ago. Therefore, at this moment, Will began to rely on his senses to judge the enemy and quickly found the magical beast above. However, after a difficult resistance, he was still sent flying. What on earth happened? Wignall, faced with this sudden attack, everyone was knocked down. During this process, Will discovered a seriously injured Wignall, so he went forward to rescue him, and eventually fell into the depths of the dungeon together with him. At this moment, everyone arrived at the 11th floor. This place no longer belongs to the jurisdiction of the tower. It is a place where only high-level mages can set foot. Therefore, everyone's situation is extremely dangerous. After a brief moment, Wignall woke up from his dream of being abandoned. Seeing this, Will wanted to tend to his wounds, but was sternly rejected by Wignall. At this moment, he still wanted to protect his false pride, so he treated the wound on his arm by himself. Seeing this, Will ignored him any further. He calmly observed the surrounding environment, and finally, through an analysis of the existing conditions, deduced their current survival time and prepared to rejoin the others. This proposal raised Wignall's skepticism. He wanted to wait for the arrival of the rescue team, but was instantly rebuffed by Will. Because of the previous magical beast, he believed that the rescue team would not arrive smoothly. On the other side, a teacher named Eliza was talking with Werkner. In the process of the investigation, he found the teachers whose heads had been chopped off. He informed Werkner of the details, which made the other party feel deeply uneasy. Afterward, he went to the dungeon together with Edward, who had just arrived. However, they did not notice that Rosti was hiding right behind them. At this very moment, Will and Wignall are looking for other teammates. On the way, Wignall was mentally tense and always overused sensory magic, ignoring any reminders. But Will didn't care about this either, and patiently analyzed the correct sensory range for him. This calmness surprised Wignall a lot, and what he didn't know was how much effort Will had put into achieving this. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura of magical beasts appeared around them. Faced with the 3 magical beasts in front and behind them, Will chose the former and entrusted the beast behind to Wignall. Faced with the powerful magical beast, Wignall's attack was a bit clumsy. On the contrary, Will behind him killed the beast very calmly. This ease shocked Wignall deeply, and it was this momentary distraction that gave the beast an opportunity. In a moment of desperation, he used an illusion magic that was ineffective against the beast. At the critical moment, a flying sword stopped the beast's attack, and then Will quickly slaughtered the beast. After the battle, Will popularized the knowledge of the beast in front of him to Wignall, telling him that he couldn't use illusions against this type of beast. Hearing this, Wignall suddenly laughed out loud. At this moment, he was very disappointed with his performance. Seeing this, Will quickly spoke up to comfort the other party, saying that he was an excellent elf, but received a negative answer from Wignall. Afterward, he learned about his status as a laggard in the clan. On the other side, this headless monster in front of them is extremely perverted. Not only did he attach someone else's head onto himself, but he also crushed it right in front of Colette and the other person. This scene left a massive shadow on them, and just as the monster was about to attack the two of them, Will arrived just in time to block the attack. A major battle between the two sides was triggered instantly. After the monster incident, Wignall confessed his own experience. He expressed that among the elf race, he was the only fool who spent 6 years yet still remained at the school. Furthermore, illusion magic was originally supposed to be magic that turns illusions into reality, but he could only summon incorporeal phantoms. Although Wignall ranked in the top 3 at the school and possessed outstanding strength, these achievements were completely worthless within the elf race. On the other side, while talking with Colette, Lihana also expressed the same viewpoint as Wignall. She carried a strong sense of inferiority regarding herself, and she had once even been in the same class as Alfaria. After witnessing a true genius, she viewed herself even more as a frog at the bottom of a well. Upon hearing this, Colette immediately spoke up to refute it. She shared Will's experience to encourage her eyes full of pride and affection. At this moment, Will was still listening to Wignall talk about his own experience. The other party stated that he is the older brother of the current fairy wand. They grew up together from childhood and were very close. He originally wanted to keep supporting her, but what drove him to despair was that while he could only float leaves, she was already able to summon an entire forest. The gap in talent between the two was immense. No matter how hard he practiced, he ultimately still couldn't keep up with her pace, becoming the tail ender of the clan. After listening to Wignall's story, Will did not laugh at him at all, but instead felt genuinely relieved. He felt that the other party was very similar to himself, so he kept encouraging Wignall, stating that he would protect him until he picked himself back up. Just as he finished speaking, a swarm of high-point monsters appeared right in front of them. However, this alone wasn't enough to stump Will. He drifted through the monster crowd like a phantom, quickly slaying all the monsters before them. This whole display left Wignall utterly dumbfounded. Looking at Will, who was covered in injuries just to protect him, Wignall felt a bit at a loss. He didn't understand why the other party wouldn't abandon him like his own clansmen did. Will, however, didn't care about that at all, because he felt that Wignall was an elf worthy of respect. As the two were talking, a sudden sound caught Will's attention. Seeing this, Wignall instantly activated sensory magic, but found nothing unusual after searching. Despite this, Will still looked dead serious, because based on his rich experience, he had already concluded that the dungeon was about to spawn monsters. After a dead silence, a bud-like object appeared before their eyes, spitting out green fluid, and within it, a highly powerful monster was breeding. Seeing this, Will immediately threw a magic tool, wanting to use an explosion to prevent the monster from appearing, but the result fell short of expectations. The monster named Barkal still successfully emerged. It was not only immune to physical damage, but also had immense resistance to magic. Fortunately, the illusion magic of the elves was effective against it. Thus, Will decided to provide cover for Wignall, letting him step up to deal with the monster. Regarding Will's suggestion, Wignall appeared very resistant. His continuous past failures loomed over him, making him afraid to gamble someone else's life on it. But Will seemed completely unbothered. He told Wignall that it was fine even if he failed, stating that untalented people like them could only keep moving forward. Moreover, he still needed to make it to Elfaria's side, so he would absolutely not die. Listening to Will's words, Wignall gradually pulled himself together. Watching the other party fearlessly charge at the magical beast, yet unable to inflict any damage, he summoned his courage to use illusion magic. But in the very next moment, his magic failed, just as it always did. Just when he thought he was about to cause the other's demise, Will, with the help of Kiki, managed to block the attack. Even at this moment, he was still encouraging Wignall. This ultimate trust completely ignited Wignall. He recalled the goals he had been striving for, and unleashed his illusion magic with all his might. Trees from all directions instantly pierced through the magical beast ahead, eventually forming a forest. Looking at everything before him, Will was sincerely happy for Wignall. But when he turned his head, he saw the other party kneeling on one knee. Ignis stated that he wanted to apologize to Will for his previous rudeness, and acknowledged him as a warrior worthy of respect. Seeing this scene, Will smiled helplessly. He had previously seen Wignall practicing diligently and held great respect for him as well. After this incident, the two officially became close friends. Having escaped the crisis, Will and his companion began searching for their teammates. Guided by magical tools and Kiki's sharp sense of smell, the two quickly found traces of their companions and prepared to regroup with them. Somewhere in the dungeon, Cyan and Julius were walking aimlessly. The two could get into a huge argument over nothing more than water, experiencing constant friction along the way. In the midst of their bickering, Cyan suddenly grabbed Julius to hide. Julius, who hadn't sensed the magical beasts at first, thought Cyan was overreacting. However, the sudden appearance of the magical beasts completely shattered that thought. Facing the pack of magical beasts ahead, Cyan called on Julius to step up and fight. Julius was deeply shocked by this, stating they couldn't handle so many magical beasts. But Cyan didn't care about any of that, because the magical beasts before him were exactly the type that Will had saved him from. This instantly pushed his anger to its peak. Meanwhile, the student's base was also attacked by the magical beasts. As they fled frantically, one person accidentally tripped and fell. And just at this critical juncture, tears of blood, blessing of beheading, the sacredness of the cursed girl, the saint's execution sword. Students, evacuate to the 6th floor immediately. Other teachers and guardians are currently leading the evacuation. Follow their instructions. Yes, after rescuing the students, Werkner used his flight technique to locate Edward. This impressive ability left the students looking completely astonished. Leaving the scene, Edward stated that Lihana's team had already lost contact. However, Werkner didn't panic at all. Thanks to the crystal on Kiki, he knew that Will was currently on the 10th floor. On the other side, after a long search, Will and his companion found Cyan, who had finished off the magical beasts. Just as Wignall was feeling shocked by Cyan's battle achievements, Julius suddenly emerged from behind him. After inquiring, Will learned that Colette and the others were not there. This made him highly uneasy as the two prepared to go look for them. They prepared to go search for the two people who are in danger. At the same time, Colette and Lihana run into their school teacher, but just as Colette is about to step forward, Lihana senses that something is wrong and holds her back. Right after, the two of them witness a horrifying scene. The headless monster in front of them has not only attached someone else's head onto its own body, but it also crushes it right in front of them. It then states its intention to destroy the barrier. This series of actions sends chills down the spines of the two girls. Faced with the sudden attack, they are both frozen in place. At the critical moment, Will suddenly appears and blocks the attack. Cyan and the others closely follow. After seeing the bizarre enemy, Will tries to strike first to gain the upper hand. However, he is sent flying by a single blow and only avoids injury thanks to the help of his companions. The headless monster initially intended to kill Will and everyone else, but its companion notices the approaching Edward, so it drags him away. The headless monster feels a bit regretful about this. It immediately activates a teleportation magic circle, and then, under the shocked gazes of everyone, teleports the monster from the 10th. This is the biggest crisis Will's team has ever faced. At this moment, both Wignall and Lihana have lost their combat capability. Cyan has also come to a standstill due to fear. Even worse, even Will, who is always courageous and charging forward, has been shaken. He is kneeling on the ground, trembling with fear. After the magical beast named the Evil Duke appeared, Will felt a strong sense of danger. He saw powerful magical energy gathering in the opponent's mouth. Then, it launched an attack without any mercy, instantly shattering the wall behind everyone. Its overwhelming power made Julius complain out loud. Realizing the gap between them, Will reminded everyone to retreat. During this process, Wignall took the initiative to stay behind and guard the rear. He used illusion magic in an attempt to block the magical beast, but as soon as he turned around, it broke through his barrier instantly. Fortunately, Will showed up just in time to take him and escape the scene. After retreating to a safe location, Will and the others discovered a large number of evil sentinels nearby. Their situation is extremely dangerous right now. Despair is suffocating everyone's hearts. Just when they were at their wits' end, Will stood up. After explaining the basic information about the Evil Duke, he proposed the idea of fighting. As soon as he spoke, it immediately triggered Julius's opposition. He believes they can't fight the Duke at all. But right at that moment, Julius spoke up in strong support of Will, and under his lead, everyone quickly reached a consensus. Lihana also handed the command of the team over to Will. This made Will even more determined to defeat the Duke. He slowly walked towards Julius and said he would tell him the secret of Elfaria's magic. Ultimately, he successfully changed Julius's mind. A moment later, Will and his group arrived in front of the Duke. After dodging the opponent's attack, Julius used his clones to begin a bombardment. Subsequently, Cyan and the other two also joined in the attack. However, they still couldn't hurt the Duke even a little bit. Everything happening before them was within Will's expectations. He descended from the sky to strike the Duke. After being flung away, he threw out a magical tool. Combined with Wignall's magic, it pinned the opponent down, successfully creating an opportunity for Julius, allowing his ultimate move to hit the Duke. After the explosion ended, the evil Duke was still standing before everyone, which shocked them deeply. All of this was witnessed by Will from above. He asked Lihana to act as their final trump card. With her extremely fast speed and agile movements, she successfully approached the Duke, who had just been frozen. But in the next moment, a suddenly appearing barrier blocked Lihana's attack. This barrier was highly likely set up by the headless monster from before. Not only can it trigger automatically, but it can also launch active attacks. Even though Will arrived in time and had Kiki activate defenses, his goggles were still shattered by the shockwave. For a moment, he fell into a perilous situation. On the other side, Through a crystal ball, Edward and his companion saw everything. This made them even more anxious. They hurriedly rushed towards the destination. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, both Will and Lihana had been injured by the Duke. Will's eyes, in particular, lost their focus. He stared blankly at the goggles on the ground. Before everyone could snap out of it, the Duke launched another fierce attack. Seeing this scene, Lihana made a decision. She planned to buy time for everyone by herself, and she stated that this is her fate as a member of a knight family. Hearing this, Wignall also stood up. The two of them charged toward the evil Duke together. Watching the two individuals who are about to lose their lives, Scion, out of panic, is gasping for breath repeatedly. He keeps hinting to himself that running away is the correct choice, and just at this moment, Will, who is on the ground, suddenly regains consciousness. He expresses his desire for Sean to give him a punch because his goggles are broken, and right now, Will is deeply afraid. He hopes to use the pain to clear his mind and pull himself together. Seeing him in this state, Scion instantly flies into a rage. He takes large strides toward Will, lifts him up and continuously throws punches at him. After a few punches, Will finally regains his composure. He slowly picks up his sword and then runs toward the Duke. Will's behavior leaves Scion deeply perplexed. He sees that the other person doesn't show any look of fear on his face. However, this thought is immediately dismissed by Colette. She states that Will is a coward, but unlike those who use wands, he cannot attack from a distance. He can only use his sword to constantly approach enemies who are much stronger than himself. This is precisely the symbol of Will's courage. These words deeply touch Scion. On the battlefield at this moment, Will continuously dodges the Duke's attacks. Without his goggles, he is terrified, but for the safety of his companions, he can only steel himself and press onward. Faced with the Duke's large-scale attack, Will abandons his sword and leaps up. Seeing this, Colette immediately understands his intention. She quickly summons a sword of rock. Combined with Will's slash, it instantly cuts off the opponent's wing, completely infuriating the evil Duke. As the battle reaches a stalemate, Scion, riding his protector creature, arrives at the center of the battlefield. Using the cover of the Fire Eagle, he successfully reaches the front of the Duke. He then unleashes high-level magic, dealing a heavy blow to the opponent. After the explosion, the Duke is completely unharmed, while Scion is blown away by the shockwave. Just when everyone is at a loss, a crystal falls in front of Will, and this was done by Rosti, who is not far away. Looking at the crystal in front of him, an unfamiliar memory appears in Will's mind. After snapping out of it, Will suddenly runs toward his sword in the distance. He tells Scion to combine his magic with the sword. Hearing this, Scion immediately activates his magic. As the fire merges with the sword, a magical sword wrapped in blazing flames is born. At this moment, Will launches an attack on the Duke once again. After rapidly closing in on the target, the magical sword instantly melts the surrounding magic. Then, like a falling meteor, it strikes the evil Duke. Ultimately, it splits the monster in two, completely resolving the crisis. This was a scene that deeply shocked Will and the others. The monsters that had originally backed them into a corner were instantly covered by several beams of light and subsequently vanished entirely. This exaggerated scene made everyone look up, only to discover an elderly man holding a staff on the cliff. Not long ago, relying on the power of the magic sword, Will successfully defeated the evil Duke. Shortly after, his power also rapidly receded. Seeing this, everyone let out a sigh of relief, but the next second, a large number of evil sentinels surged from behind Will. At this time, they no longer had the strength to fight, and Wignall and his companion, who had arrived in a hurry, were too late to save them. At the critical moment, a large-scale magic circle appeared under the feet of the sentinels, which then quickly wiped them out, and the person who took action was none other than the staff of the Holy Light among the 5 rods. After seeing clearly who had come, everyone present knelt down in worship. Only Will was attracted by a young boy, who also noticed him. He slowly walked towards Will, introducing himself with a somewhat profound meaning. At the same time, the headless duo appeared somewhere in the dungeon. At this moment, they had a strange sword in their hands, and their words seemed to imply they were planning some terrifying operation. After the dungeon incident, the accident-prone joint training came to an end. During this period, many teachers were sacrificed, and the Academy also formally wanted the mastermind behind the scenes, though no clues have been obtained for the time being. In the Academy's medical room, Will and the other survivors were resting inside. At this time, Lihana was being fed by Colette. Colette had been peeling apples happily, but as Lihana kept eating, she quickly lost her composure because even Will and the others' portions were about to be finished. Although she tried hard to explain afterward, this scene still left a deep impression on everyone. After a moment, Lihana changed the subject. She talked about the battle with the Duke and affirmed Will's resourcefulness and courage. Hearing this, Will hurriedly became humble, while Julius took the opportunity to count Will's faults. However, before he could say a few words, Colette stuffed his mouth. While everyone was playing around, Scion suddenly asked about the magic sword Will used. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at him because they shared the same doubt. But after hearing this, Will knew nothing about it, feeling that his mind was completely blank at the time. Prompted by everyone's reminder, he remembered the young boy from that time and became increasingly curious about his identity. At night, the boy named Finn came to the principal's office. He placed a broken sword in front of the principal and indicated that someone might be conducting experiments in the dungeon, so he brought the sword for him to study. After finishing the small talk, Finn began to question the principal about Will, because swords were generally under his management. Regarding Finn's statement, the principal states that Will is a student of the Academy and has always worked toward the goal of the wand. Neither side is willing to back down. After a brief standoff, Finn sighs, surprised surprised that a swordsman would make a wand their goal. He decides to leave Will in their hands for a while, but makes it clear that he will intervene afterward. Their discussion ends there. Soon after, Will, having mostly recovered from his injuries, resumes his practice. His extraordinary physical strength leaves Julius and the others upstairs in awe. While everyone is discussing Will, Cyan shouts from above and jumps down, refusing to accept defeat. Enduring intense pain, he demands a rematch with Will. Will initially wants to decline, but agrees considering their prior agreement. This leads to a scene where Will is constantly dodging fireballs. The two then run around frantically right in front of Werkner and Edward, creating a chaotic scene. Sometime later, a test is conducted by Werkner in class. This is the first of the final exams for the 6th year students. Once all the exams are over, Will embark on a brand new journey.